Over there! There's one of these vermin! Die! He's dead!
Remorse and pain are precious when binding you to the earth. You. I remember you. Fear be gone. I would harm no child of my making.
This is your doing. You made me. Made me this creature. What are you?
I am the land. You are our champion.
You selected me. Chose me.
As shall my children yet to come.
What is it you seek?
This age is sickly. An ancient poison, an older rage, brewed in a cauldron newly forged.
This has something to do with the epidemic.
Seek truth, my champion. Defeat the serpent of knowing with iron spur.
I've had enough of others making decisions for me, pretending to know how I should feel or behave. So the vampire who made me is some sort of disembodied entity? Or was he just projecting this vision in my mind? Maybe Edgar can help me with this one.
God protect us. You've got a leech in the hospital.
Yes, my hospital. My mission is to heal while you go about warring.
You've set the table for a snake. I wonder why there's venom in your food.
I'm growing tired of your song. You're a woodsman, McCallum, not a doctor. Return to your hunt.
Remember, I've a good nose for machinations. I can flare the scent at a mile. You can't hide from the god.
Leave him, Jonathan. This is sacred ground. Neutral territory. And I just had the carpet cleaned. By the sacred stole, this is very bad news. Bad news indeed.
What happened?
The hospital has been attacked. We have injured patients, at least one dead and several missing. This has spiraled out of control. Even the most infirm are asking to be allowed to return home.
Are you worried about the situation or your reputation? Now is not the time to think of oneself.
Of course, you're right. But we cannot afford a public scandal. It would ruin us. We must restore order, and quickly.
You mentioned a dead patient. Who is he?
She, Jonathan. She was Miss Harriet Jones. I found her room like a slaughterhouse. Blood everywhere. The duty nurse is taking care of the mess.
Very well. I'll help you.
Jonathan, please. I can't rely on anyone else. And this concerns you as it involves vampires. Someone has taken advantage of our more liberal tendencies here.
In what way?
Jonathan, I may turn my head when you or her ladyship indulge, but I will not allow this place to become a nest for street feeders.
Please then, tell me.
Sean Hampton, the man we thought we'd saved at the docks. It seems he was infected after all.
So Hampton became more beast than man.
Exactly. And now Guard of Prewen suspects the hospital of vampire activity. Do you realize what that could mean for us?
Well, they are not far wrong. The hospital is almost crawling with vampires.
McCallum is a fanatic. The Guard will stop at nothing. You don't know what they're capable of, Jonathan.
Very well. Since I brought Mr. Hampton here, I will put an end to this. Sean Hampton lives and breathes for the well-being of his flock. There's no other place he would go but the docks.
But the suffering continues.
Doctor, please.
Damn. The pain.
What on earth happened here?
Damn disgust on every street corner. The daily.
Good evening, Nurse Brannigan.
Good evening, Doctor.
What can you tell me about the recent events in the hospital?
That Mr. Hampton killed Miss Jones in her room, then ran away.
And did you see all this?
No. I was working by the tents when it all happened. I only entered the room when they asked me to clean up the blood.
Where is Miss Jones's body?
I don't know. I'd imagine the morgue. It all happened so quickly.
Did you see Sean Hampton leave the hospital?
I think I saw a silhouette exiting the hospital gates after the shouting started. At first I thought it was someone who was just scared, but... well, maybe it was him.
Goodbye now.
It's here again.
Good evening, Miss Howe.
I need blood, Doc.
Is there...
Many things can happen under cover of night, Dr. Reed. But I took no part in this massacre.
But did you see or hear anything?
I can't say I did. But the smell of fresh blood almost made me faint, Doctor.
I'll leave.
Oh, Jonathan. I cannot believe my eyes. Poor woman. Butchered by some savage scowl.
Yes, and I'm afraid I'm at least partially responsible. The man, the scowl, I brought him here.
Jonathan, how could you say such a thing?
Forgive me if I feel despondent. For there seems to be no end to the suffering and death that surrounds us.
I'm always here for you, Jonathan.
What do you know of Ascalon? I was threatened by a creature, a vampire in Whitechapel, stating I had to obey the law of conduct.
What more can you tell me about him?
He was bigger than a man. Huge, in fact. He seemed to radiate violence. I thought he was going to tear me apart. Then he vanished.
Fergal, the executioner of Ascalon. You were fortunate he was not after you, but rather out doing his master's bidding.
What is Ascalon?
The Ascalon Club are the most powerful vampires in Britain and exert tremendous influence. Take my advice and stay well away.
I have experienced a certain difficulty when faced with holy symbols or trying to enter religious buildings. Have you?
Now that's quite a question. I don't know why, but yes, it has happened to me.
Is this a sign? The hand of God in action? Are we repellent unto heaven?
I don't have the answers, Jonathan. But I believe superstition and magic is just fact awaiting the lens of science.
Aren't you frightened?
Very little scares me, my dear. To be compelled to avoid symbols of faith does not concern me.
Have you embraced this woman? Like the other patient, this Mr. Renfield?
Her name was Amelia. And no, I did not kill her. I vowed a very long time ago that I would never take another life, unless they ask.
Is there sufficient vitality in the blood of the sick and dying patients?
Yes, Jonathan. The hunger gnaws at me every waking hour. Frankly, I'm starving.
Temptation surrounds us. Rich, vital. How can you resist?
Over the years, any pleasure I once gleaned from feeding is long gone. I drink for sustenance. And though I still thirst for more, I restrain myself.
Thank you, my lady. I hope to...
Another night of the glorious battalion. Perhaps I should have considered the offer.
Good evening, Milton.
Good evening, Doctor. Still trying to save lives?
What can you tell me about the recent commotion in the hospital?
Someone killed Miss Jones in her room, and Mr. Hampton's gone missing. Doesn't take a genius to piece it together.
You don't seem shocked by any of this.
Why should I be? Whoever did this must be long gone by now. And besides, he got rid of the old bag.
I'd like to see...
Wise choice, Dr. Reed. A reluctant...
Good evening.
Dr. Reed.
Can you tell me anything about the recent commotion in the hospital?
It's a tragedy, pure and simple. The hospital is meant to be a safe haven to all. We failed the people who trusted us with their care.
Do you think I should not have brought Mr. Hampton back here?
It's not your fault. You rescued that poor soul. It was the Christian thing to do. But we should have noticed his instability.
Goodbye, Doc. Hello again, Mr. Blight.
Good evening.
Do you need medical...
Afraid so.
Throughout his...
You're working at the Pembroke Hospital, aren't you?
Goodbye, Mr. Blight. It's locked.
You should be grateful for his luck instead of taking out his frustrations.
Good evening.
Eve.
Goodbye, Mr. Thatcher.
We fought for England, but England won't fight for us.
Good evening.
Good evening.
What can you tell me about...
Everybody's afraid. Death has always been a frequent visitor. But murder? How can we cope with that?
As a nurse at this hospital, it is your duty to deal with these things as best you can.
Yeah. Until it's my turn to have blood spread all over the walls. I entered the room first, Dr. Reed. I've seen what that monster did to the woman.
Goodbye.
So many deaths. As for me, and still more
I'm quite busy.
What can you tell me about the recent commotion in the hospital?
Nothing like this would have happened if we'd had enough staff and proper shifts.
So you don't think the blame is ours?
We all hold fast here, Dr. Reed. Our methods may differ, but we are all trying to make a difference.
Thank you. Good evening, Doctor.
And good evening to you, Dr. Reed. Can I be of any help?
Can you tell me anything about the recent commotion in the hospital?
I'm sure it was not your fault, Dr. Reed.
My fault? What do you mean?
Oh, nothing. It's just... I heard it was you who brought the murderer inside our walls. But you couldn't know, could you?
Goodbye. Good evening.
I'm okay.
Do you need any...
I'm afraid I...
You
And you have...
What can you tell me about the recent commotion in the hospital?
I heard shouting coming from the first floor. I was asleep when it started.
I have to go now, sir.
I'm all right. Don't waste your time with
Good
me.
evening.
As for me...
Do you...
Do you know?
Despite...
Well, at least...
What can you tell me about the recent commotion in the hospital?
It's a disgrace. How on earth can patients be attacked in their own rooms?
I've read your son's medical report, Beatrice. It's not the flu or anything life-threatening. What has you so worried?
He was at death's door when he was brought here. I just want him to be better as soon as possible.
He's not out of the woods yet, you know. He might need to stay here longer than expected.
Take care of him then, Dr. Reed. People here only seem to focus on contagious patients. I worry my poor Mortimer will be neglected.
Goodbye.
Reads me like a book.
Good evening.
I'm okay.
I have...
I'm all right. Don't waste your time with me.
Good evening, Mr. Fiddick.
Good evening, Doc.
Please, tell me about the recent commotion in the hospital.
I heard Miss Jones call for help from her bedroom. There were some loud noises, like people fighting. All of a sudden, it went quiet. And then a nurse started screaming.
Do you know who the nurse was?
Not sure, but I think it was Nurse Hawkins.
Goodbye for...
You always knew the words to calm the children, Ellen. As for me, what a blundering idiot.
That's Pembroke nowadays.
Veins. This dead flesh needs it.
Oh, please spare me, Dark Queen. Spare your obedient slave.
Good evening.
Can you tell me anything about recent events in the hospital?
Oh, goodness me. This whole story is such a shame, sir. I have no idea how it happened.
What are you talking about?
Poor Miss Jones. Her body is missing. Someone stole it.
Miss Jones's body has gone missing?
Yes. The body was brought here this morning, and now it's gone.
Who could have stolen a corpse?
That's exactly what I asked myself for the whole day. Who could do such a thing? These are terrible and shameful times, Dr. Reed.
Goodbye, Miss...